Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where we take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. For this video, I'll be reviewing the supplemental book Drizzt. Dang you for putting an apostrophe S on that name. Travelogue of Everything, designed by Lucas Anderson et al. For Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you are interested in a sponsored review, please reach out via email, Twitter, or Discord, or by submission form at roguewatson.com. If you enjoy the content, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping, supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. So, Drizzt's Travelogue of Everything is very much in line with Xanathar's Guide to Everything and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. You can get the naming scheme here. It is a player-focused supplement. It's about 100 pages that is all about the subclasses. This one offers over 30 subclasses for all 13 classes, plus a new class with the Tactician, which should make a lot of fans of the 4th edition Warlord very pleased. I think it's very well done, to the point that I was reminded of how much I loved Tasha's, especially with how just inventive and cool a lot of those subclasses were. I would maybe even say this is one of my favorite subclass books that I've reviewed in a long time. And I've reviewed a lot of really good ones. The only way I hesitate is because I'd look back at one and be like, oh yeah, that one's really good too. And it's amazing that I've been doing this so long and I still read subclasses that I haven't even considered this theme before, or these kind of mechanics, and that's really impressive. Whereas others, I'm beginning to see the same. Okay, yes, there's like almost everybody's got a plague doctor, for example, and there's a plague doctor here. Although it's weird that it's the Artificer that's the plague doctor. But there were still some really, really fun ideas, and overall the quality is very high. It's got a nice professional layout. There's artwork throughout. Drizzt is actually in the book, which is always a big thumbs up for me. When the actual person who's got their name, the in-universe figure whose name is plastered all over the cover, how much do they actually are involved in the pages of the text? And I'm pleased to say that Drizzt is involved on pretty much every other page, because he's got a little sidebar commentary on literally every single subclass, and he's a pretty witty, fun guy from what I can tell. I've not actually read any of the books, I don't know his personality, but it was nice to be able to read his thoughts on everything. And it really did feel like he was, if not like providing the information, then at least like commenting on that information, like he's leaning over your shoulder and kind of pointing out all the fun parts about everything. It also includes like I wrote down over 50, I believe, magic items, which I really liked the magic items here. That was a huge plus. I mean, you could do a whole book on just the magic items here. It's really awesome how much content we get. And then the final like 10 or 15 pages is basically different expanded rules or new information or guides for a DM specifically. So I guess the first 70% of it are classes and subclasses, which is all player focused. Although obviously the DM is going to need that information. And then the rest of it is all DM focused with the new magic items, I guess, which are given to players. And then the Dungeon Master tools, which are literally like, here's some more traps. Here's notes on how to run shopping and negotiations and mystery and investigation session. Here's how to maybe go through the motions of domesticating an animal, because a lot of us have played D&D and you run into a really cute owl bear, or you've got a dragon egg or a griffin egg or something, owl bear cub, I should say, and your player's like, oh, I definitely want to take this thing, and maybe some of them eat it, some of them sell it, and then those special few want to raise it as their own lovely domesticated team mascot, which we do have some rules there for that. In terms of reviewing a supplemental book that's 100 pages long with dozens of subclasses, I am going to focus on my favorites. I will go over the Tactician first, because as a whole new class, I think it deserves to be broken down in a little bit of detail so you can see what you're getting. Now, I have not played 4th edition. I am aware of the Warlord and kind of how it worked, and the fact that it's was apparently a very popular class, kind of a battlefield mastermind fighter, which is exactly what this Tactician is. It's based around this first level ability of the perfect plan, which is essentially the bless spell, but you can do it as a reaction. So like every turn, you can just throw out a bless on somebody, and then you've got that, and you've got at second level the analyze ability, which you've got. You can look at their vulnerabilities, resistances, traits, all of that, or you can just add damage based on your perfect plan dice. And then all of the abilities you get as you level up just kind of build on those abilities. Essentially very similar to like the Artificer's Flash of Genius, but maybe not quite as good, but you can use it more often because, in fact, you actually have, as part of your leveling progression, you gain more of these perfect plan dice that you can expend as you go up. So, Artificer's Flash of Genius, I believe it's only your intelligence modifier per long rest that you can do, whereas here, pretty quickly you can use these a bunch of times, even though you're rolling a d4 rather than just giving you a flat benefit of your modifier. You can use your intelligence rather than your dex for AC calculation. That's pretty awesome. At 6th level, you can grant additional attacks to allies using their reaction. Eventually, you can even gain an additional reaction, which is almost game breaking, but you can only use it for the purposes of using your perfect plan, and it's not till 14th level anyway. The Tactician includes 4 subclasses. You've got your standard, like here's the College of Valor subclass, your fighter subclass, which gets you a fighting style and extra attack and all that, which is called the War Mind. There's the Scholar, which is your wizard spell class, your standard. Hey, you want to have spells? Here's your spellcaster. And then you've got the Mentalist and the Grandmaster. Grandmaster is kind of the uber Tactician, where you can actually move your allies around, and then Mentalist has an ability to kind of do what you're doing to your allies but to enemies and kind of inflict the Bane condition on them. If I'm being honest, the Tactician is not really my cup of tea. It doesn't really excite me as a class concept, and none of the subclasses really change that, but I think it still works well for what it's trying to do. Just because I personally don't see myself wanting to play this style of class doesn't mean there's a lot of people that would like to do that kind of behind the scenes, moving the pieces around, really getting to the nitty gritty of, very similar to how the Bard could work if the Bard basically didn't have spells in terms of you're throwing out that Bardic Inspiration, but here you're throwing out your perfect plan. And you've got other abilities versus spellcasting. So for that reason, I think it works. I think it's very well balanced, even if it doesn't personally excite me. I'm not sure this kind of class would have ever excited me in general, and none of the subclasses really fix that for me. But I think for what it's trying to do, it does it very well, and it's cool that we get 4 subclasses with that. All right, so that is the Tactician. Now I'm going to go over the subclasses. I'm not going to go over all. I think there's 32 total. We just covered 4 of them very briefly with the Tactician, so now there's still like over 2 dozen. I'm just going to cover like my top 5, and then I may, mention a few here and there as we get to them that were memorable for different reasons. But you'll be able to, glean enough of this based on my review, which is hopefully always the case. The one you're looking at right now is one of my favorites. First of all, great art. The Artificer mechanic. I think all of the Artificer subclasses are really freaking cool from Tasha's. And this one somehow adds one that is also really freaking cool, but doesn't step on the toes of the other ones. You get like your own personalized motorcycle, basically. Although you could flavor it however you wanted to. I would let, my players have a fucking mechanical spider thing if they wanted to, as long as it was the same size and followed the same rules. Like, what the hell does it matter? But I think the rules work pretty well without being too crazy. Like, your jump distance is tripled. You can take the dash or disengage axe as a bonus action. You can use your intelligence check instead of athletics or dexterity, because you're literally, driving your vehicle. Your walking speed is increased by 10 feet. So it's not like you're literally on this like super vehicle spinning around. That would make a lot of traditional DMs balk at this kind of huge, especially because it's your 3rd level ability. Instead, it just kind of makes a lot of your movement stuff that much easier. Excuse me, I just choked on my own air. And I think it works really well and feels very well balanced. And then the cool thing is, once you get to 5th level, now you can start tricking your ride, and you get all of these cool, like, you can start, driving on walls and, slide into people and do ramming speed, or, push the nitrous and go super fast. You've got missiles that can shoot out of it, like all these cool customizations that you can add to it. I'm a big proponent of any subclass that gives you a really cool ability right out of the gate at that third level or maybe first or second, depending on what class you are. And then enhancing that with some cool features later on, and that one absolutely checks that box. So the mechanic is definitely one of my favorites, and it fits really well with the Artificer and seems to work out very nicely. Another of my favorites is the Barbarian Path of the Avalanche, because you gain, you have a resource called Momentum. This reminds me of something I wished D&D classes did. That I'm going to use an example of World of Warcraft, which is a game I haven't played in probably 15 years. But it had a cool system where, spellcasters had mana, but then you had the rogue generated their, ability resource system by attacking, and then the fighter generated their resource ability system by defending. I don't remember what all their abilities were, or what even the systems were. But that was pretty simple and worked very well, and that fueled all of their stuff. That's how they were. So the fighter didn't have mana; they had, rage or whatever, and it built up as they attacked. That's what reminds me that's going on here with this Avalanche, with the generating momentum, is that you generate your own resource system called momentum by doing different things. You rage and you move at least 30 feet. You rage and you knock somebody over, or it just says while raging. You have to rage and do that while you're raging. You make a natural 20. You actually trigger a trap. Or just take damage from anything you're generating momentum. So you're always generating this resource as long as you're moving, attacking, and taking damage and raging. Things you'll be doing as a barbarian anyway, but now you're keeping track of this. And then you can use that momentum to fuel all your new abilities. And at third level, your abilities aren't super crazy powerful. They let you do some neat things, like you can shove somebody prone without even having to worry about a contested grapple check or anything. You just spend the point to do it. You can gain advantage on intimidation or performance. It's pretty minor stuff. But then at 6th level, you gain a really cool signature greater momentum power, and these ones are awesome. Now you've got huge bonuses to saving throws, or you gain temporary hit points. You can end a paralyzation effect on yourself. Just you can just take another attack, which is probably the one that a lot of barbarians are going to take. Just, oh yeah, I would like to just attack again. I think it's a really cool system and works out very well, and I was really pleased to see that. And I feel like the momentum and the path of the Avalanche, the description is very cool. Channel the force of motion at terrible blows and inexorable speed, able to discharge the buildup of energy into great feats of strength or inexhaustible acts of endurance. That's awesome. I love it. Tell me more. I do want to point out, this did not make my top 5, but the Path of Revelry that you're looking at on the other page is exactly like Frey, which is our halfling barbarian in our current live-streamed actual play campaign that you can watch on my YouTube channel right now, Rime of the Frost Maiden. She's playing a halfling barbarian that is literally, she's playing the Bestial Soul one, but the Path of the Beast. The Path of Revelry is basically how she's role-playing it, which is she just laughs and giddy every time she rages and is having a good time. That's literally what this is. You deal extra d4 damage, and you can taunt enemies while you're raging as a bonus action, and that does all kinds of debuffs to them. That's beautiful, and that reminded me very much of Frey's character, which was great. Probably easily in my top 10, just not quite my top 5. I will also point out that 2 of the subclasses that this supplement offers are actually improvements on existing subclasses. One of them, which I knew was a problem, and the other one I wasn't aware of was a problem, which is funny because that one is also one of my character's classes. This one, the Path of the Berserker Redux, is pretty famous as being kind of a garbage trap subclass from the original Player's Handbook, because you do a little bit better when you rage. It's like the standard, it's like the champion version of Barbarian, basically. It's very simple and just makes you slightly better at being a barbarian, rather than giving you new abilities and features. The problem is, whenever you rage and ended your rage, you would become exhausted. And exhausted is a serious ability. You can only cure it once per long rest. It has progressively debilitating effects. It's horrendously bad. And this attempts to fix that by saying, okay, now that doesn't happen. Instead, here's other features that you can do, and just really does some smart tweaks here and there. So I thought that was a huge thumbs up and a good way of doing that. I mean, again, this could have been its own separate supplement where you could have been like, hey, here's how I'm fixing, these subclasses. Instead, it's just included in this giant huge package, which is pretty nice to see. But I thought that was very legit and was like, okay, this makes this particular subclass from unplayable to playable. Whereas the other one I thought which is the monk, Sun Soul monk, was very playable. We have somebody playing it right now, but does attempt to fix a few of the abilities, basically scaling it better, because Burning Hands doesn't really scale that well. We're going to skip the bards, but I do want to point out, because what you're looking at right now is one of my only real complaints of this entire supplement. And I want to say two things. First of all, I do like the art that's used here. There is art on, I think, just about every page, and there's character art for all the subclasses, which is something that I shouldn't expect, but I do kind of expect it, because if you're going to make this professional book and you're going to, slap Drizzt's name on there and then model it after Tasha's and Xanathar's, those very much have a single character picture of every single subclass. So I do appreciate that that's here. So on the one hand, I kind of expect it. On the other hand, it's still nice to see. And the art is very good. I like this art of the dancing tiefling lady, and I like this art of this dude with like the gemstone microphone and gems woven into his beard, these giant shoes. My complaint is that there doesn't seem to be a like art. I forget the word for it, like a graphic head of art department or something. I'm talking about my butt right now, but there is no consistency to the art style. There is like wildly different. In fact, if I flip through like just like 3 different pages here, and then again like here, like you can see, like even on the same just double spread, it's very distracting for me to have this much of a different art. I would have preferred if all the art looked like this, or all the art looked like this, or at least similar. When you really have like straight up like cartoony art, or do you have like watercolor art with like just brush like paint art, like I don't know, maybe that's being too nitpicky, but it was distracting to me. And unfortunately it really is throughout this entire book, that it's a hodgepodge of different art styles, and it makes it feel I don't know what the intention was here, basically. If you just liked different artists and wanted to use different art, or if you had to do that, or what the story was there. But it was, I liked seeing this, it's tricky, and I'm going to end up basically putting it on a pro and a con, because I did like the art in here, but to have it be this different and this close proximity to each other was very jarring for me. We are going to skip down to Druid, the Circle of the Streets. This one might be number 6 on my list, maybe not quite top 5, mainly because it only has the one standout ability to me. First of all, it's a really funny idea to have a druid that's actually an urban druid, because that seems like completely antithetical to what the druid is all about. They're all about like nature, but in this case it's like, oh well, isn't just a city just the natural home of people? It goes into this pretty funny description about of why a druid could be an urban druid. But what I love is that at 6th level, which it sucks you have to wait till 6th level, but at 6th level you can use wild shape to transform into whatever the fuck you want as an animated object. Because you're basically kind of a garbage druid, I guess, or not. That's kind of the picture I'm getting. But you can turn into like any kind of object, and at 10th level you can become a large object, and at 14th become a huge object, and use that stat block from animate objects. I just think it's hysterical to picture a druid wild shaping into like a couch or a lamp, and you can change your size to where you can be a decent combatant, or you could be a small little scout thing too. You could turn into like a stapler and just kind of go around. Maybe not a stapler, but something that's appropriate to the universe. I just think it's hilarious and a great ability, the Druid Circle of the Streets. The Monk Way of Redirection. This one surprised me, because I usually like the classes that are a little more involved. They have their own like systems, and they're front loaded with some cool ability that builds up, as I just mentioned with the mechanic. But this one just feels like a very well done monk, to the point that I feel like this should have been the baseline, either the baseline monk or like the default subclass, instead of the Way of the Open Palm. I think it's that damn good. This one really reminds me of like when I picture actual like martial arts, heroes or kung fu movies or something. This is how I picture them playing as, which is, very much like a Jackie Chan type figure, or like a movie character that would be, using all the environment around them to be doing things, and being able to just be super effective without even necessarily wielding a weapon, or quickly become wielding a weapon. And it does that very well. Obviously it's specialized in improvised weapons, but at 3rd level it can basically just, and the mechanic's already there with redirect missiles, but in this case you can redirect melee attacks, and then you can disarm people effectively and use that weapon against them. That's really cool. Again, it's a pretty simple idea for a monk, and the parkour thing where you can take the dash action, get all these different abilities. and yet it works really, really well, and it's very well designed. And I just loved it, which is, it surprised me that I loved it so much, because I usually like classes that are a little more clever with their systems, but this one's like, hey, this is how monks probably, how I always picture what I think a monk is trying to do, which is a martial arts based, fighter, rather than the, classic knight or any other kind of stereotypical archetype. And for that one, I think it worked really, really well. I mean, I also liked really a lot of the monks. The Way of Terror worked really cool. It was based on just doing a frightening effect and having that build. And then the Sun Soul Redux fixes the steering wave instead of the arc strike. So instead of doing burning hands, it kind of scales better. I don't know about giving them straight up fireball at 11th level for 3 key points, which means they can cast fireball like 2 or 3 times a day at that point, even though it, or not even day. Sorry, key points are on short rest. So that gives them a lot of fireballs. So I don't know about that. That seems a little bit powerful to me, even though fireball is a 3rd level spell, but that's one way to fix it, I guess. We're gonna go to 46, which is the Sorcerer Fey Essence. This one reminded me of what you would think a Druid would do, which is having a lot of plant abilities. But this one is tied to like Fey plants. The fact that, the Fey are obviously all about like forests and nature a lot of times, or maybe not forest, but nature certainly, because Fey can also be the winter Fey. This one is specifically seems very summer Fey themed. You can create foliage, like summon up flowers or plants, and then everybody can hide in them, which seems kind of goofy, but actually could come into handy in a lot of tactical situations. And it provides you become heavily obscured, and then later at 6th level you can actually go in there and people can become temporarily invisible when they come out of it. It becomes like a really interesting tactical thing. I just like the ability of summoning up a certain section of the battlefield that becomes tactically useful for the players. And then at 14th level, you can summon all these magic flowers that do all these crazy cool spell-like abilities. So for being like a freaking poison ivy type character, which I did not expect a Fey-based sorcerer to do that. So again, very surprising to me, but works very well, and seems to have some really cool abilities. Number 50 is the Warlock of Fate. This one is freaking awesome. It uses an actual Taroka deck, which you'd think more subclass ideas would take advantage of cards, in addition to dice, because we're always playing with dice, but just to add a card mechanic. Very few times do I actually read and review classes that do that. And I don't think I've ever seen one that actually uses the classic tarot cards or Taroka cards. So in this case, it's every long rest you get to draw from these cards, and then that gives you some kind of ability. And then later on at 6th level, you get a whole nother chart of abilities where you get like an additional 2. And these ones kind of give you, general, like, okay, when certain things happen, you can impose certain. I kind of wish it was a little more interesting, but they let you impose certain advantages or disadvantages on things, and how well you do that depends on what you drew. But then the ones you get at 6th level feel very cool. They basically give you spells that you can use. But I like the concept that you get it at a long rest. You know all your cards ahead of time, and that feels very appropriate to like knowing your fate and being able to plan ahead after the long rest. And of course, you can kind of twist fate and change it around as you level up. But I think that works really well, and I just love the fact that it uses cards. Deceiver is actually pretty crazy too. It basically gives you a portal dagger where you can, slice into the world and open up these portals that connect to each other. That's freaking wild. But my other one that I really love is the Wizard Planar Weaving, which I usually don't like Wizard subclasses that much, and these ones have 2 really interesting ones, with the one that's based on sleep, somnimancy, but I like the planar weaving one really well. I mean, even it gives you a 2-page full of charts is going to be interesting. In this one, you get to choose certain planes, and then you get their passive effect at 2nd level, which gives you a lot of either, languages, proficiencies, or you can, breathe underwater, or, do all these kind of, you gain telepathy, kind of basic but useful passive stuff. And then at 6th level, you get an active ability based on those ones that you chose, and those all have different cool abilities you can do. And also at 6th level, you can change the damage type depending on which plane you did, which all of them are associated with different damage types, as well as ability checks. You can also swap saving throws around. So you can see where you can really get in the nitty gritty of this. If you really like your wizardy stuff and your spells, you can swap all those around. You've got all these different weave effects. It feels very wizardy in a very good way. So I appreciated that quite a lot, the Wizard Planar Weaving. So those are my favorites. That's like my top, 5, 6, or 7, whatever it was. And I thought they were all really amazing and well done. All right, quickly, Chapter 2 is magic items. These are just freaking awesome. Really, really fun ideas. Really quick. There's a pilotable beholder tank that where you literally climb inside and operate the levers and press different buttons. There's a little, instrument triangle that you can ding that frightens people, but if you ding the wrong one, you frighten yourself. There's a ball that you release, a fucking magic indestructible hamster who runs around and just triggers wild magic surges, which is just hilariously helpful and maybe not helpful, but just I love the chaos of that. That is awesome, and players would absolutely want to do that as much as possible, but it has to rest. You have to roll a d6 after every time it does that, and on a 1 it finally stops and chills. But that is a hilarious idea. This magic cookie tin that you open it up and you pull out different cookies, and they can become anything from just something that heals you to something that summons ghostly versions of characters that can, attack people or heal you or summon, fortresses and all these different crazy things. Or they could just turn into like sewing supplies. Very interesting. And again, I love the chaos. There's a spear that you can jab into the ground that summons a tree underneath you, and then you're supposed to leap from the tree and stab people. Which you have advantage on that. There's a bow that you can shoot an arrow from, but you can stop the arrow in mid-flight, and then you can look out of it like it's a fucking drone or something. Like, just absolutely bananas ideas. And what I noticed when I was reading through these, which I thought was a really cool idea, is that a lot of them, and probably all of them, are tied to the actual subclasses that we just went over. So a lot of these are directly certain kind of magic items that you could see a lot of the classes and these subclasses specifically using. Like there was one that was based on what is Maztecan, is like the kind of Aztec, and there was like an animal warrior who was like the jaguar clad, and their abilities where they could have different animal forms that would be covering their body, and they would gain different abilities. And so one of like the magical artifact weapons is a special Maztecan longsword that's got all these cool tiers that you can either gain, if it's a sentient sword, you can gain favor or lose favor, and just a lot of these have to do tied directly into those subclasses, which I think is very cool and the smart way of doing it. And I just think they're awesome magic items in general. And then the final chapter, the Dungeon Master's tools, seem to have just really good, solid information, similar to how Xanathar's and Tasha's just added, hey, here's areas that we think are underdeveloped or could use some more ideas, and we're going to tell you about, here's some good notes and things. And they just cram a lot of information on here on, how to handle shopping when there's, magic items in the world. I really enjoyed this page on just reskinning monsters. Like, hey, if you need to use a certain monster, just look at the existing monster stat blocks. You can change that monster however you want, visually and thematically, but it could still use the hit points, the AC, and the abilities, and then you don't have to, bend over backwards trying to come up with custom monsters. So really, really smart ideas throughout this. Super thumbs up. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for Drizzt. It's Travelogue of everything. Pros: a new Warlord-inspired Tactician class with 4 subclasses. Pro: over 30 subclasses for all 13 classes, plus the Tactician. Pro: smart fixes for the Barbarian path of the Berserker and Monk, Sun Soul Monk. Pro: over 50 fun magic items thematically inspired by the new subclasses. Helpful chapter of DM tools, including running investigations, reskinning monsters, and domesticating creatures. Beautiful character art with professional layout, and Drizzt's witty commentary. Now I'm doing it on every other page. Yeah, it's a laundry list of great things that I loved about it. And my only con is that it does have that wildly different art style that I really do think it unfortunately clashes a little bit too much when you've got those that are so jarringly different, back to back. All right, final verdict. Move over Tasha with dozens of subclasses, magic items, and a new class. Drizzt's Travelogue of everything is more than worthy to carry the infamous Drow's name. Thank you everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Thank you.